spreading, or this consciousness that you talk about? To what extent is it spreading, both in the U.S. and globally?
Well, let me put it this way. From Muslim, at least from my own understanding, that the Prophet himself is the first liberation theologian for the Muslims. So if you want to take that trajectory, it's been spreading from the time the Prophet himself spoke truth to justice, truth to power at that time. However, there has been a challenge to coloniality from early on. We need to understand that the colonial structure was not thrown out because all of a sudden the French and the British and the Belgium and the Portuguese decided, you know what, we just got enough, let's go and have our coffee and croissant. They were challenged by a very profound sense of resistance of people who actually challenged the structure year in and year out, until they really removed the colonial structure. Adding another dimension, in the US perspective, also you had liberation theologian, Muslim liberation theologian in the personality of Malcolm X. If you think of Malcolm X and his training and his understanding and his perspective, he would be representative of a particular notion of Muslim liberation theology, coming at a very particular time in here, and he was also connected to transnational effort. If you remember, his tour to Africa was connected both to the non-aligned movement. Nasser provided the funding for his trip at that time, engaged in very profound organizing, and as such he represents that notion. Muhammad Ali is another person here domestically in the US. So as such, there are a number of individuals and figures that have historically been linked to a particular notion of liberation theology. So I would say it has a long duration, but now it's a little bit more being articulated, and I would say as we are seeing some of the Arab Spring issues are rising, some of us are taking ourselves the role to write and challenge some of what I consider to be the exclusivist perspective that are taking place. So we're writing to challenge some of those notions that are emerging.
So as a follow-up to this, how do you envision Muslim liberation theology working in coordination with a Christian liberation theology?
Well, as I often say, they said we need to have an interfaith dialogue. I said, no, we don't need an interfaith dialogue, we just need interfaith work. Because we're already accepting the notion that we work for justice. So for me, the notion of interfaith dialogue assumes that we're coming to the table from different, what you call, places. No, we're coming from the same place, but we are having different tactics that we employ, and therefore we have to have interfaith works. We have to have a joint liberation theology to say that the centrality of the human being, the dignity of the human being, the freedom of the human being, the honor of individuals, the economic viability of communities, that we need a sustainable economy, an environment that is actually healthy. We need to challenge all these notions that are beginning to say that the human being is just a number, a marketing number, that you're just like a cubicle inhabitant, that you just finish your function and then the next person comes to occupy your cubicle. So for me, it's also to alter our own language of how we come as religious communities into the table to try to do work. And I think it's very important for us to create a greater voice of our collectivity in the face of what I consider to be a global minority. We are dealing with a global minority, the 1%, or those who represent the militarism, the military-industrial complex, the environmental destruction, the corporate commodification of a human being. They're a minority. But it's our silence and our perceived division that makes it possible for them to succeed. They'll tell you, oh, don't talk to this person because he's Muslim. He has 3 eyes behind his head, and they're going to eat you up. So you begin to create these divisions. You argue between African Americans and Latinos that you should not actually work to each other because you're taking each other jobs. So we begin having a fight at the plantation level rather than actually emerging and looking beyond that. That's the challenge for us, is to come out of the frames that have been placed in our own mind, and that is the biggest challenge. The handcuffs are very easy to get rid of. You get a key, small key, you can actually pick them while you're in jail. But it's the mental cuffs that are on our mind that is just so difficult, because you could be punching yourself in the face and you think that you're actually achieving freedom. Or what you're getting is actually bruising yourself mentally and those around you. And that's, for me, is the biggest challenge.
We have a question about Palestinian Jews. Someone says, I never heard about Palestinian Jews before today. Please tell me more. Are they discriminated against?
I think discriminated by the Israelis, because they don't consider them actually Jews. They have differential treatment for them. But I encourage you to go and visit them in Nablus. They'll give you knafa, so that's a joint, also something that you have with them. So visit with them, and there have been, you know, positive and communal relations with them throughout the Palestinian history. So they're present in there. They're discriminated against by the Israelis, not by the Palestinians.
You're talking specifically about those in Nablus, right?
Those in Nablus, yes. The city of Nablus. It's actually the third oldest city in history, city of Nablus. So it's actually a very long history for it. My family have an old store in the market, in the old market of Nablus. So somebody told me, we need to go and study US history. I said, that's not history, that's modern events, because my grandfather's store is about 800 years old. That is history. That's just a joke.
The question is, Western propaganda conveys the idea that political Islam seeks to impose a theocratic state. Is this true? If so, is this justified by the right of self-determination?
Well, there are some who want to create a theocratic state. So I'm not going to say that there are some that don't think that way. There are some that think that way, and they want to advocate that perspective. However, in thinking broadly about the Muslim world, I would say nothing is normal today in the Muslim world. Nothing is normal. Just to think about it, from 1975 till today, the Muslim world have faced one war after the other. The Iran-Iraq war, the Lebanon invasion and the Lebanon civil war, the first Gulf War, the second Gulf War, the Palestinian Intifada, the attack on Lebanon, the attack on Gaza, the invasion of Iraq, the invasion of Afghanistan. That type of activity produces a number of results. One of those results is the exclusivist view that if this is what happened to us, what we need is basically a withdrawal and purifying ourselves, something that I would say Europe experienced during the 13th century in relations to the war in Spain and how they reacted. There was a whole process of trying to purify themselves, as well as the presence of the plague. So you have these dynamics that takes place. However, I would say that the problems are far more systemic in relations to issues of economy, of education, of expenditures. Over the past, from 75 till now, the Muslim world have wasted about $1 trillion+ that all went to weapons manufacturers in order for those wars. Essentially, this is making it possible for our military-industrial complex to gain while they're depriving generation after generation of their ability to actually lift up their own societies and their own communities. And then our alliances with these leaders, we are allied with some of the most despotic individuals that are there, because they deliver for us what we want in terms of the oil, as well as their investment that comes from oil into our own economy. I recommend for people to read The Confessions of an Economic Hitman to understand the relationship that exists in there on a continuous basis. So what is the net result? The net result is a structural diminishment of a society, creating compounded ignorance in the society, and then the intellectuals have to leave, because if you open your mouth, either you're in jail or you're killed. That's why a large number of Arab and Muslim intellectuals are in the West. Not because they hate their countries, it's because we have structures that actually you could be arrested for having a thought in your mind, right? And you contemplate it while you're taking a shower, and somebody next door hears about it, and therefore you get arrested for it. So the structure is real.
What do you think Palestine will look like in 10 years? Just a simple question.
Well, I just finished a piece that I just sent out to Turkish press today. For me, the so-called peace process has been attempting to structurally maintain the occupation by means of negotiations and to expand the Israeli footprint on the Palestinians while creating a security structure that is trained by the US and the Jordanians in such a way to deprive the Palestinians from the ability to think about freedom. They only have to think about eating and surviving. That's where we are. Now, are there any possibility of challenge? I think the Arab world right now is in a major period of influx. Definitely what is taking place in Egypt will have a profound ramification. What is taking place in Syria will have a ramification. What is taking place in the Gulf, because I still think that the Gulf is playing a very decisive role at this time by engaging in a divide campaign to create a Sunni-Shia war. The end result of it will be that this region will be in war for another 50 years, and we're buying weapons that nobody uses to kill each other and thinking that God is pleased with it. All right? So that's the structures is still an influx, and we'll have to see what will take place overall. So I would not predict what will Palestine look like, but I would say that those events in the surrounding area will have a profound effect on the outcome and how Palestine would look like. Finally, Israel has no solution to its problem. Its problem is that there is Palestinians. They knew that when Zionism began, right? Even though they said a land without a people for a people without a land, they knew that there were people in there because the return that the bride is married, we knew for a fact, all the evidence shows that. Therefore, they have no solution to their own problem as it relates to the Palestinians. They cannot expel the Palestinians, because I said to the guy, I had a debate with the person from the Israeli National Security. I said, you would like to transfer the Palestinians? Can I provide you the buses? I'm saying this joking. I said, where are you going to send them? To Jordan? They already have about 2.5 million Palestinians plus in Jordan. So you're going to add 4 million Palestinians in there? I'd love to go on a recruitment campaign for 6 to 7 million Palestinians that are so angry. And there's a border of 480 miles between Jordan and Israel. And you think that's going to provide you security? Right? Which school of strategic planning have you graduated from? I really would like to know. Right? That solution. Now the second, you're going to build more settlements. So what's going to happen is you have an apartheid structure. So is that your solution, to have an apartheid structure? Welcome to South Africa. I would think you should go and read Nelson Mandela's book just for you to see their future. Right? So that also is another possibility. You want to use death and destruction? All right? Kill them all and let God sort them out? Well, Hitler tried that strategy. We know that that does not end your problem, because you cannot kill your way out of a problem. Okay? So basically, Israel has a box that is so ideologically constructed that they can't even look outside the box to think about the box that they are in. And that's one of the problems when you begin to believe your own propaganda. Right? At least early on, the Zionists were actually factual and they were systematic and empirical. Now it's not, it's ideological. And that's a calamity, because they can't even realize the box that they're sitting in.
Here's an interesting question for you. Generally, Muslims in the U.S. have not been involved in Palestinian solidarity. They seem to be afraid of of drawing attention to themselves because of Islamophobia. How do you get through, how do you get them involved?
Well, I have a number of hats, so I'm going to give you the hats that I wear just to see. I also run the Islamophobia Research and Documentation Center at Berkeley. And we have an Islamophobia Studies Journal that we publish. We have a major conference coming next week, 17th, 18th, and 19th. And I have actually a set of 4 conferences globally, one in Vienna, to look at Islamophobia as it relates to the re-emergence of the right wing and using anti-Semitism and Islamophobia as the new emerging trend in Europe. We have a conference in Paris in December that looks at Islamophobia as it relates to its colonial subjects that are coming in the colonies and the colonial state is reworking its colonial racist discourse relative to those subjects. We're also having a conference in Turkey that looks at Islamophobia in the Arab-Muslim context, because as we saw from some of the Arab Spring, there was a lot of that has taken place, and then the one in Berkeley. Now, the intent for this is to push back for a cluster of groups and organizations that have demonized and work structurally to demonize Muslims in this country, because in their view, they want to create a reflexive hatred of the American public relative to Muslims that makes and begins to rationalize using violence against Muslims abroad. And therefore, that is part of the strategy. And between 2008 to 2012, they spent $119 million to demonize the Muslims in this country. The other part that I wear is also the Muslim Legal Defense Fund. This is a legal outfit to defend Muslims that have been entrapped under material support as a result of the terrorism cases. Since 9/11, we have a total of 4,365 cases of Muslims who were entrapped under material support. So 4,365 cases. I would say that 95% of these cases have nothing to do with the war on terrorism or Afghanistan or 9/11. 95% of the cases are Palestinians who were doing work in supporting the rights of the Palestinians for self-determination and freedom. That includes a host of nonprofit organizations. The biggest one is the Holy Land Foundation in Texas, where Prime Minister Sharon asked Bush directly in the White House to shut the largest Muslim charity, and they did so. But the government went ahead in the court proceedings and did something else. They included every donor to the Holy Land Foundation and every organization that worked with them under a new category in the law, unindicted co-conspirator. Unindicted co-conspirator. So 258 Muslim national organizations were included as unindicted co-conspirators, as well as a large number of individuals who donated. For me, that is part of the strategy of new counterintelligence program. Every mosque today is under monitor. NSA is monitoring everyone, but they have a special place for Muslims. Right? In one case in Los Angeles, this person came to the mosque to begin to agitate and try to recruit our young Muslims to go to jihad. The imam of the mosque picked up the phone and called the FBI. He said, "We have a crazy person in here that is talking about jihad and so on." They said, "Oh, no, we'll check it." Nothing happened. They called again. "We have a crazy person, right? He's just calling people to jihad and so on." It turned out that this person was an FBI agent. And in a matter of 3 months, he had a falling with the FBI, so he filed a lawsuit against the FBI. And now we're having a treasure trove of information coming out from that. In New York, the New York Police Department set up an intelligence unit in New Jersey, where this intelligence unit went to map the Muslim community, including where the people live, the restaurants, where people gather. They also sent agents to go to the MSAs, the Muslim Student Associations in universities, and in one agent went into a camping trip with the Muslim student and recorded all of their activity. We have the file. We got it through the Freedom of Information request, and his file notes that he went and he commented on what type of things that they discussed, and he said they prayed 4 times a day. Right? Now, this bright agent, because he did not get up early in the morning to pray with them.